So hopefully the sound quality will be better than ever on both of the mics I'm going to be using today. You guys will have to let me know. In any case, I'm Dr. Jared Jones, and I've been a Buddhist for about 20 years, training pretty hardcore in the Gelug tradition, and a little bit on again, off again with a couple of other traditions of Buddhism. In addition to this, for the last about 6 years now, I've been training in the Dragon Gate Taoist lineage, and my PhD covers a number of areas of interest like ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. So, as best I can, I've done my best to try to educate myself in addition to just being a practitioner, uh, to make sure that I know what I'm doing. Hello, Cleric, welcome. And Earth Wombat, welcome. Glad to have you both here. Glad to see you back in the game, Cleric. I hope you feel rested up. Yeah. So, for those of you who are new, the reason why we are all gathered here for pretty close to the 41st day in a row is I'm on a bit of a mission to help people understand what meditation is and how to do it. And in particular, there's a lot of types of meditation you can do in retreat that work fantastically well in retreat, but are very, very difficult to bring back into your real life and to do effectively in real life. And so I'm doing my best to give you techniques that can help you train in all of this stuff and be successful in all of this stuff in the midst of your actual real life in the world. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, um, stick around. The techniques that I teach are arranged in such a way that they'll make it entirely possible for you to go step by step through the stages of meditation identified, for example, in the Bhavana Krama, which is was written in around the 800s by the great Buddhist saint Kamalashila. And in brief, yes, you could go through any number of techniques in retreat that would help you accomplish these steps and stages, but in the midst of real life, when you only have 30 minutes or an hour at any given time to train in these sorts of things, you need something. You need something powerful to meet the challenges that you're going to face in the midst of real life. Welcome, Barack. Good to see you again. For those who were wondering, on our very stream here, Barack Obama has become a stream enterer. You heard it here first. For those of you who don't understand that joke, stick around for a while. So a few people actually have asked me in the last few days about streaming to other platforms. I'm trying to get enough. I think you have to have 50 followers on TikTok to stream over there. I already have enough followers on my Facebook to dual stream to there. And today is the first time I'm streaming to the Shorts feed as well as the main feed for YouTube. So we may see quite a few. The chat is killing me. We might see quite a few people coming through. I do have it in the works to try to stream to a much wider audience, but I need to hit a certain critical mass of stuff. Also, as you have probably noticed, I've been basically spending every penny that comes in upgrading the setup so that everything is just right, so that it's a good viewing experience. Hopefully, again, the audio should be better today than it's ever been. And when I switch over to the other mic, once again, hopefully the audio quality on that other mic is better than ever before. We shall see. So, having covered this much ground, my friends, we have now reached that time in the stream where I ask for audience questions. So the first 20 minutes or so of this class, I take questions about your personal practice. If you have other questions about Buddhism or theoretical questions that are more general, save that for an open Q&A. This is for people to ask questions about their personal practices. So if you do have some questions about personal practice issues, let me know at this time, and I'll cover them before we get into our session for the day. Oh, yes. While I'm waiting for questions to come in, exciting announcement. If you didn't see it in the community section, the website for Lohan Palm is live. So if you are interested in training in the physical aspects and the sort of training of the subtle body, the chi aspect, shen aspect, and so on and so forth, that comes through the Shaolin tradition, as influenced by the many one night stands that Shaolin has had with the Taoist tradition, and also an extended relationship between this particular lineage and Tibetan practices because of the unique qualities of this lineage. Um, Neil Ripsky, the wonderful human being that he is, has agreed uh, to let me help him as a non technical person to help him put together a website, to put together a really professional looking course where you can actually train in all of the physical aspects and energetic aspects that make your meditation practice work even better. And since those are two things I don't teach, um, I thought, wow, what a match made in heaven if he wants to do this. And he said yes. So I've spent about the last week just pouring my soul into making him a website that's worth looking at, and putting all the things in one place that show people what an incredible human being Neil really is. I mean, he's a powerhouse. It's unbelievable the things that he's done in terms of training and practice, and my goodness, I mean, it's really extraordinary. And I think once the podcast goes back up, having looked at the website, even if you don't sign up for his course, having looked at the website to see what his actual credentials are, you're going to watch that podcast in a whole new light. I mean, again, he's one of these guys who's so incredibly humble, you would think, what could this guy possibly know? So understated. And then you look at what he's accomplished, who he's trained with, the types of practices he's done, and he's a beast, a total beast. In any case, yeah, the Lohan website is up and running, and we are taking pre-signups for the Lohan course. So if you go over there, you can fill out the little form that I have attached to that, and you can read all about Neil. And hopefully, in the next couple of days, the podcast with Neil will be back up so that you can learn more about him and just enjoy a conversation between Dharma fellows, both struggling on the path, as it were. Okay, Earth Wombat says, yesterday I mentioned resting is not doing something deliberately. I don't really understand what I'm supposed to do to achieve that. Yeah, that's very hard to do. Sorry, don't know why that's getting so dark. So, yeah, how do you rest? Part of the reason that I train things in the order that I train them is to give you an experiential understanding of what that means before you try to do it with consciousness. There's a lot of systems, a lot of teachers that basically say, from the beginning, you should just rest your mind and try to be aware of its flow of contents, like clouds passing through the sky and so on and so forth. But I think that I actually hesitate to say humbly, but I think that's too difficult for most people. I think that's something that you can't do. Your mind's going to run all over the place. You're going to get involved in the contents in your mind, and you're not going to be resting the mind at all on anything, much less following its contents without getting involved in its contents. So the way that I teach these skills is in a particular order. First, you need to be able to place your mind somewhere with great force and hold it. That's foundation one. Foundation two has a couple of functions. One, you're learning how to take your practice off the cushion for the first time, which is really important. There's so much sunlight, my camera thinks that it should be darker. Hold on. See if I cover the sunlight. So foundation two is body scanning. So this makes your mind very, very, very calm. And with a very calm mind, um, now you can start turning your attention inwards without getting pulled so much by a conceptual thought, which is really helpful if you're trying to do any of these practices. And then we turn to actually accessing the fundamental qualities of your five external senses. And it's through accessing the fundamental qualities of your external senses that you begin, finally, to have some understanding of what it would mean to rest in the nature of one of your awarenesses. Yeah. You know, but again, not easy. Not easy at all. Not easy at all. Uh, there's no quick way to do that. You just have to have enough experience in other stuff that you can begin to understand what it is you're trying to do. Oh, there it goes again. I wonder what it thinks is my face that it keeps adjusting like this. Well, terribly sorry, friends. Bear with me just a moment. I shall return in just a second. I'm going to close this blind a little bit so that it stops freaking out. Yeah, Bubba. What are you doing? There we go. Okay. Like I said, technology gets smarter and smarter, but also dumber at the same time. All right. So, how do you rest in the nature of awareness? Um, First, you need to have enough concentration that your mind is not so distracted that it can't actually contact any of your awarenesses. Then, you need to probably start with one of the external senses rather than consciousness, because that's going to be easier. The best one to start with is probably the body, because if you get good at becoming aware of the body and all of the components that make it up and blah, 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 your mind becomes more calm. And then I like to go to vision, because vision makes up just a huge part of who and what you think you are. And so if you can open the visual field and see that there's no self in between the what's being known and the knower, which is something that'll probably happen, I don't know, I don't want to put a number on it really, but somewhere between 6 months and 3 years into the process, depending on how much work you're putting in. That will be quite shocking to you in the best possible way when you discover that you thought that you were seeing, and there's no you involved in seeing in the way that you think there is. um, and getting some experience pulling back all these layers of conceptuality that you layer on top of something like vision, for example, which dominates your experience of everything as a human being. Vision dominates a huge amount of your sort of mental bandwidth from moment to moment. So being able to rest your mind on the visual field without the normal conceptual layers that would be there will start to give you a sense of what it might be like to just rest the mind in general, you could say. And I had a bit of a debate with a Theravadan practitioner about whether you could make the mind completely non-intentional or not. And the debate's kind of interesting in a way, but much more important than the debate, much more important than the debate about sort of the Abhidharma position on intentionality and what that means and all of this is, from a first person perspective, can you get all unnecessary intent out of the way of what's occurring so that only the bare minimum, the thinnest layer of intention is there? Perhaps just the intention to abide the mind in a state with no other intentions, right? And then by the time you get to consciousness, then perhaps even letting go at some point of the intent to have no intent, because you've become so familiar with having no other intentions, you can simply abide in the nature of formless awareness without that intention, right? So how do you do that? You have to go through a series of steps and stages in training, and I've laid that out as 5 foundations, which is a pretty humble name. But I call them foundations for a reason, right? If you're trying to build a practice, see, here's the thing: what you're going to build on the foundation is whatever your practice, whatever your lineage practices are. That's going to be the temple that you build on the foundation. I think this is what people should understand about what I'm teaching. You you're going to be building your temple on top of this foundation. And so you're going to put 5 layers of extremely powerful foundation of cognitive skill and self-awareness and awareness of the components that make up your being. And then you're going to build on this very solid foundation all of the lineage practices using these skills. So whether you're doing Tibetan Tantra or you're doing Thai forest or you're doing whatever you happen to be doing, the reason I'm calling them foundations is the way that I'm teaching them, it doesn't matter. You could be doing Advaita practice as far as I'm concerned. You could be, again, one of my students is Eastern Orthodox, one of them is Jewish, you know, and both of them are having experiences that I would consider to be Buddhist experiences. Because what the Buddhists are talking about at this level of training are universal things that if you do the work with your mind, this stuff just happens. Okay, anything specific to keep in mind during your practice? So the basic thing you have to have in mind, which is why I say if you're doing my techniques, for example, you should look at the instructions, not one time, but 5 times at least. Read the instructions as with as much focus as you can, and really trying to understand what each of the pieces mean 5 times. And watch the video that goes along with it 5 times. And in between each reading and watching, do some practice so that by the time you go back to it, you go, okay, is this thing that I was doing, does it sound like this part or that part? Was I actually doing this? Do I understand the instructions on this bit here? Why do you need to do all that? Because according to the great masters, one of the things that determines your success in the practice is mindfulness. And this word sati or smrti in Sanskrit, what it means is being able to recall something. It doesn't mean naked, non-judgmental awareness. Whether you're talking about the Pali or the Sanskrit, mindfulness means to remember something, to recall something, or to actively not forget something. That's what this means. So what are you recalling and actively not forgetting, right? What, in terms of long-term memory and active memory, what are you doing? Well, when you sit down to do the breath practice, if you forget the instructions, long-term memory, if you forget the instructions, your mind falls off the object because you can't remember what you were supposed to be doing. So you have to have the instructions really well drilled in your head. This is like part 1, according to the great masters. You need to know what the hell you're doing. If you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're going to sit down, your mind's going to run all over the place, and you're not going to know that you did anything wrong, basically, right? So you have to know the instructions. This is the first part. And you have to know them well enough that they come up right at the relevant time when a mistake is occurring or the mind isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, that your mind goes, the instructions were this, and now it's doing something else. I need to bring it back to the instructions, right? Okay. And then active memory. Active memory is the process of recalling in the moment what you're doing in a particular task, right? As one of my teachers said, it is the active act of not forgetting what you intended to do. Lock that definition in your brain somewhere. Thank you, Geshe Dakpatopgyal of Charleston, for locking this in my brain somewhere. The active act of not forgetting what you intended to do. You intended to place your mind on the sensations of your breath, and at the end of each breath to count using a number. That is the active act. And if you forget that this is what you intended to do, then you will fall off the object of meditation. You'll fall out of the activity because you forgot. Here, this is what I'm doing right this second. It's a bit like I sometimes say holding a cup of tea. If you forget you're holding the cup of tea, you'll drop it, right? You see kids do this where they're holding a ball and somebody calls their name or they see something and they drop the ball because they forget that the active act they were engaged in was holding the ball. And this is how we are with objects of meditation. You put the mind on the breath and then you go squirrel, and the mind immediately runs off. And you have no skill in holding, or very little skill in holding after you've made contact. So There are two aspects to memory in meditation, and both of them are extremely important. Extremely important. People think, oh, I need to be completely non-conceptual or I'm not meditating. No, 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 no. You need to have your memory more active than it normally is to remember the instructions and to actively recall what it is you're doing right now. Because if you forget what you're doing right now and what you intended to do, then the mind jumps off. And if you forget the instructions for what it is you're supposed to be doing, the mind loses the activity. So there are these two aspects to sati, smrti, mindfulness, so called, which I sometimes think is better translated as non forgetfulness or remembrance, would be a better translation for the term, memory, even. In Western psychology, they would call these two things that you're doing here, they would call it long term memory and active memory. Sometimes I just use those two terms. Okay, so that's you're not going to be too rusty. You know, these skills, once you have them, they're a bit like riding a bike. Um, they don't go away completely just because you stopped for a few days. You will be a little rusty, and maybe you can't get as deep as fast. Although sometimes you take a break and you come back, and your mind is like way better than it was. So sometimes you just have to integrate what you've already done by taking a break. Okay. Barack Obama asks, would you say to put aside other meditative exercises as I do the course? I know Sravasti Abby asks for 20 minutes of meditation a day. No, no, no. What I would say is if you do, let's say you do 5-minute intensive breath, this gives you the ability to rip your mind away from ordinary activity and place it into at least the beginnings of a meditative state very quickly. And you don't even have to do all the 5 minutes. Once you have this technique of being able to pull your attention in, then you can use that technique anytime you need to pull your attention in to get to any practice you're doing. So if Sravasti Abbey, and by the way, Sravasti Abbey is Venerable Tupten Chodron's one of my teachers. She's my preceptor for my Pratimoksha vows. She's a very precious teacher to me. Take 3 minutes before you do your 20 minutes of whatever practices she's given you and pull the mind in, because then the quality of your 20 minutes will be even better. Likewise, if you had 30 minutes, let's say, pull the mind in with the breath practice, then do a body scan for, 7, 8, 10 minutes, whatever, and then do your 20 minutes of practice that she's given you. Because if you can pull the mind in and make it more calm, then whatever you do for those next 20 minutes is going to be way higher quality. This is why I say you're building the temple of your practice on the foundations. The foundations are something to build the whole temple of your lineage on, or to help you build the temple even stronger, even more firmly, on even firmer ground. So you don't have to give up what your teachers are telling you to do. I just recommend that, you actually gain the skills that are being talked about in these texts, so that when you do those practices, like if you're visualizing the guru, or if you're, I don't know, if you're doing rumination on Lamrim topics, or if you're doing Nondro, or whatever you're doing, those practices will be even more powerful if your mind is more powerful. You see? Okay. Jack Schultz, curious your thoughts on motivation for meditation and the relative importance of having one or many of those motivations. Okay. Motivation is extremely important. If you look at what the Buddha says in the Pali Canon, for example, he says that when you're trying to overcome the negative aspects of your mind, you should be like a person whose hair is on fire. Now, of course, that doesn't happen overnight. You don't develop that kind of attitude just because someone told you to. You have to go through as I would call it, Foundation 5. You have to go through ruminations where you think about the reasons why, and you make observations of actual real things in your mind and in the world. And you have to come to the conclusion that these negative qualities I have inside really do warrant me having an attitude as if my hair is on fire when they come up, that I need to put these down. And since there's the potential for them to come up anytime, I need to put that potential down permanently, right? So your motivation should be extremely powerful, like unbelievably powerful. But you don't. It doesn't just happen because you believe the Buddha or something. You have to you have to make observations of actual stuff and think about it using reason until the attitude comes up where you go, it really is like this, and I really do need to take action. And there's not much time to take action, and I need to do it right away because it's as if my hair's on fire. The anger that I feel could hurt me tremendously. The anger that I feel could hurt others tremendously. The anger that I feel is ruining the relationships that I have with other people. It's stopping me from advancing in my career. It's hurting my family. Not only that, if karma is a real thing, the anger I feel is destroying countless lifetimes of merit that I've created over a long period of time. What a waste. The anger that I feel is also, according to the text, please don't, everyone, please don't jump off the stream. But, according to the text, the anger that you feel that's motivating various actions, those karmas can throw you into a hell realm where you're experiencing unbelievable suffering for extremely long periods of time. If that becomes the primary karma that throws you into your next rebirth, my goodness, your hair should be on fire about this, about overcoming anger, about overcoming inappropriate types of exaggerations of pleasure, and so on and so on and so on. So you develop these motivations by thinking it through and by making observations in real life that move you. They need to actually move your heart. They can't just be theoretical things that you agree with because they sound good or something, you know? And then when you sit down and you say, I'm going to place my mind on my breath, sometimes I say, do it like your life depends on it. Do it like everything is riding on this, both in a conventional sense and an ultimate sense. And then sometimes I add, because it is. And I'm not, I mean, it sounds funny, but I'm not joking about that. Everything else in your life will be better if your mind is better. So everything else really is riding on this. Everything else in your life, you know this, will be worse if your mind is worse. Have you ever had a screwed up mind for a few months? I'm sure all of us at some point have had a mind that wasn't working the way that we wanted. You were getting really frustrated. You were getting angry. You were getting too lustful. You were getting, in inappropriate circumstances, right? Or whatever. You were too arrogant. So when your mind is screwed up, it screws up everything else. But right now, for 5 minutes, you have a chance to start taking control of your mind, and everything else could be better than it is now because you've done this. Right? Everything else from here forward could begin to get better. So it really is riding on this 5 minutes. So motivation helps. You can think about it like this, right? Motivation's like there's a river flowing, right? But it's spread out in a really wide. When it's spread out and really wide, it seems totally smooth, right? And it doesn't cut through the ground very much. But then when it gets channeled between two big rocks, for example, into a tight channel, it becomes really deep, really turbulent, really powerful, and it'll cut through mountains. So like this, you're taking all the energy of your being, and with the motivation, it's like those firm rocks that is channeling all the energy of your life towards the thing that you think is most important instead of just being spread out all over the place, at least for 5 minutes. So the motivation helps you pull all of your psychophysical energy into the activity you're trying to do. And the motivation is what helps you from day to day maintain the practices throughout the day. Because if your motivation is not very good, you'll do it, in the morning for your morning session, and then the day carries on, and you kind of forget, and you get around to it again the next day or whatever. Okay. Shining Ray. It's funny how much Buddhism relates so much to regular stuff that happens on the daily. Yeah, it is. It really is about stuff that's happening from day to day. It's not actually divorced from real stuff happening in the real world all the time. It's about what you're doing in the here and now, not about, at the end of the day, not about what's going to come next. Okay. So Wombat's asking about resting the mind. So if you take your mind, and we'll do this a bit today since you've brought it up. So if you take your mind and you rest it on one of the senses, what you find is that, how to say, when you pull the mind's activity back from the ordinary process of running around in the field of awareness, and it begins to take in, so imagine the screen as my visual field, if this is everything I can see, right? Normally, if you watch my hands, my fingers, face, the stuff in the background, normally our mind is running around with objects in the field, right? So the mind, the central mind, has to move to look around at all of this stuff. So it's not resting. It's not just abiding on something. However, if you, even right now, if you observe the entire field like this, the entire visual field, well, now it doesn't matter what appears on the screen. If you keep your attention on the square box that is happening on the screen, now it's sort of like it's still, right? It's staying the same shape. It doesn't matter what's appearing in the thing or how much it's moving. As long as you keep your awareness on the box, the whole box, now the mind can rest because it's not chasing from object to object to object to object. So yeah, you can place the mind on one thing, right? Like the microphone. You just place your mind on that one thing, and this is it. And as long as you can keep your mind from pulling off of it, it'll stay there, no problem. But even more profound than that, because you can't just focus on one little object in the field all the time, because the field is changing, you focus on the field itself, the whole field. And the whole field itself has a quality that's substantially similar from moment to moment. Right. So this is really profoundly talked about, Wombat, in the Zen tradition. How well, there's a really great analogy. They say it's a bit like a gourd, an empty gourd. Uh, you know how they dry out and they get hollow? If it falls into a river, that the gourd is constantly moving, but it responds absolutely perfectly to all the movements of the water. It doesn't get stuck and stop on one particular wave or something. It's just constantly moving without stopping, constantly adjusting to what's occurring without stopping. So, in a similar way, if you take in the whole field, the mind can't be surprised by this part of the field because it was too busy focusing on this part. It's taking in the whole field of awareness, and so it's not sort of how to say, sideswiped by other stuff that's occurring in the field of awareness that it wasn't taking in. You see what I mean? And so there's this quality of getting better at taking in more of what's actually occurring and doing that with less bias because the mind is more rested in the type of awareness that's occurring. It's less conceptual. It's making less conceptual divisions unless you want it to. You that becomes more deliberate. And so your ability to sort of decide how you're going to divide things up becomes much crispier, much sharper, and much more flexible at the same time. So it's really, really interesting. This will make more sense once you get into rumination meditation, where you start to understand that you can, at the one hand, you can make the cuts that you make in terms of intellectual and conceptual division, you can make them very sharp and clean because the mind is very bright and lucid. But on the other hand, you have this ability to pull back and take in the whole field without those cuts being there. So the mind becomes very flexible. So it has this seemingly contradictory property of having like the crunchiest, most nuanced, most detailed, intricate, like powerful conceptual divisions that you can possibly make. And on the other hand, it's completely flexible and can change those concepts if and when needed at any time. I mean, this is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Okay. All right, let's see what else came in. You can transmute anger. Okay, so Inner Cosmos says you can transmute anger to something positive. That's true, but that requires different techniques, more training. Um, there's a wonderful scene from a Quentin Tarantino film. You can look it up, where the hangman is talking about frontier justice. And he's talking about the reason that you need a dispassionate man between the person who's going to be hanged to death and the people who are angry about the crime is that if you don't have that dispassionate person, he said this is why justice, the Lady Justice, is blind, right? The reason you have the dispassionate man between the angry mob and the person who's accused of committing a crime is because the angry mob is just as likely to hang an innocent person under the law as they are someone who's someone who's actually guilty, right? So anger can be very powerful, but it makes the mind slightly less clear about its perceptions and about what's going on. So if you have the skill, for example, to generate anger, and then it's in relation to this particular object, so the anger is generating all this force over here in regard, and then you release the object and keep the force so that it's not pointed at anything. It's just the energy of having generated the anger. And then you use this to do something else aimed at other stuff. Yeah, that can work. Can you do that? Probably not. Probably if you get pissed off at something, you're just angry at it. And you're just as likely to be just in your decisions about that thing as you are to be unjust, because anger makes your discernment less, as a general rule. As you know, most of the stupid decisions you make as a person in real life is because you get angry or frustrated or outraged about something and you make bad decisions. So, yeah. I mean, there are advanced practices where you use anger on purpose to do stuff, but um, I think for most normal people, if you think you're doing that practice, you're mostly just getting angry at stuff and chasing the anger around in a totally ordinary way and calling it spirituality. And it's not. It's just being angry. That it's just totally normal anger. That's my view on that particular aspect. We are getting into around 40 minutes, so we're past the time we would normally start practice, so we're going to jump to practice, but let me do a lightning round on the last two questions. If I'm trying to meditate on the mental sense gate, but I feel tension in my body, does that mean I'm not meditating on the mental sense gate? It means that think about your awareness like Wi-Fi, okay? Your Wi-Fi signal has a certain amount of bandwidth that it can provide for whatever it's doing. So in the sort of, if you have 10 units of bandwidth and 3 of those are observing the body and 7 of those are observing consciousness, it doesn't mean that you're not holding your awareness on consciousness. You would be losing your awareness on consciousness if all of the units of bandwidth that were on consciousness for a period of time went and spread out to other stuff and you completely lost your awareness of meditating on consciousness. So it is possible for there to be distractions and stuff within the bandwidth of you not losing the object entirely. But it also goes the other way. The quality of the concentration is increasing when you have 6, 7, 8, 9, and then all 10 units of your mental bandwidth, of your attentional bandwidth, on the actual thing that you intended to do. So, on the one hand, yes, it would be better if that wasn't happening, but then on the other, you can't stop it from happening by just sort of hoping and wishing. You have to go through a long process of training where less and less of your bandwidth is getting stuck on things that you didn't intend for it to be stuck on. Yeah, the four immeasurables. You can do single pointed concentration on the immeasurables. The immeasurables are really difficult though because if you define them, most of the time that's not what you're generating when you try to do the immeasurables. Um, but whatever you can generate of the immeasurables, those are. This is the other difficult thing about them. Those are formless objects because you're generating the mental state into a certain condition and then resting the mind on that condition. Those are formless objects. They're states of awareness or attitudes that you have about something. And so it would really help. This is why I put rumination as step 5 in my stages, because it would really help your ability to rest in metta, for example, if you knew what it was like already to some degree to rest in consciousness in a formless condition. That'd be really helpful. You see? Sweet and Sour mentions Padmasambhava. I think Padmasambhava, if I'm not mistaken, who does it come through? Yeah, I mean, you find these techniques all over the place, basically. I mean, you find them in Zen, obviously, Zen and Chan practice. You find them in Mahamudra practice, which is where I'm mainly taking them from. You even find them in some non Buddhist practices, you know, like from what I can tell, Sadhguru, for example, teaches a version of just sitting. Taoists have something called Zowong, sitting and forgetting. They also have another one called emptying the heart, or like burning the heart, like a number of these sort of names. But when you look at what the practices are, it's sort of like sitting without modifying what's occurring. The reason I like the Mahamudra approach for lay people is just sitting without modifying anything, extremely hard to do. If you had hours a day to do it, it's very effective, which is why, when you look at when Sadhguru teaches it, he normally says, go home and do 10 hours of this and it'll change your life. Great. You know, when I get 10 hours, I'll get right on that. And when you look at how they teach it, I think in Rinzai, usually it's like you start with a 2-hour session, and then when you're doing it hardcore, you're doing like 10 or 16 hours a day. And when you look at the Dzogchen tradition, and my understanding of how they train in getting to subtler states of awareness, the same thing. You're doing like between 12 and 18 hours a day. So it's the most incredible technique there is. But if you can't do it, it's terrible. It'd be better to do something you can actually do. And what you can do with Mahamudra is just work on opening each one of the senses until they become less reactive to what's appearing in the field. Like I said, it's the whole screen. Instead of the mind running around on the screen trying to follow what both of my fingers are doing, and right? Oh, it's impossible. But if you just keep the awareness on the whole screen, you see me moving. You get to see all of it, and you don't have to track any of it because the mind is taking in the entire thing as one object. The wide-eyed gaze. Okay. Abhishek says, my mind wanders off too much. So I don't teach very much visualization practice. There are some systems that do that. Um, Visualizations, in my experience, my somewhat humble experience, they're very difficult to use for lay people. And it's a really good object when your mind is like at the 5th or 6th stage of concentration, because it gives you more feedback on whether your mind has subtle distraction or subtle dullness. It's one of the best objects, visualized images, when your mind is already quite advanced in terms of your ability to hold itself in a state of concentration. On the other hand, if you're not at that stage yet, I think it's very difficult objects, visualized images, very difficult objects to use to advance through various stages of practice. I think there are better and faster objects you can use. That being said, if you make your mind sharper, faster, better, able to stay on your activities more, then you can use it for whatever you want, including your math course. The real in television. You know, this would be the last thing, and then we'll do our session for the day. I think it's good to try as best you can, even though this is the terminology you find in the classical text, things like primordial mind and the fundamental ground and all this. I think it's better to just talk about this stuff in plainer language, you know? So, for example, if you turn your mind towards awareness, what you see is that it knows things, right? When we say primordial, what do we mean? We mean the qualities that it has when it's not doing anything else, right? So when you turn your mind and look at your mind, it knows stuff. It's lucid, it's cognizant, right? This is what it does. And then also when you try to find it and you say, well, is it a certain place in space? Is it inside my body in a particular location? Where is it? It doesn't have a location, and it doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have a color. It doesn't feel like anything when it moves around. So in the text they call that clear. It's clear and knowing. And why is it primordial? Well, everything else that it does is going to come second to the fact that it naturally, what it does is, in brief, it's formless. It gives rise to experiences and it knows those experiences. It's like space, except that it knows stuff and gives rise to experiences. That's what it's like. These are the primordial or fundamental qualities of mind. And then, of course, there are subtler layers to consciousness that, once again, yeah, I think for most of us as lay people, if you could just contact your mental sense awareness without the subtler layers first, that would be a huge accomplishment and would change a lot of stuff for you. And then if you want to get into, the clear light and Rigpa and all this stuff, then go train with the Tibetans. go find a lineage, and you can get even subtler layers, beyond just seeing what mental sense consciousness is like as a human being, but the layers that occur before you're a human being, even, right? That'll probably take some retreat and some hardcore practice, but okay. Okay. All right, friends, let's do some practice. Take a seat if you're not already seated. Let me know if I'm going to change over my mic. Let me know if the sound gets crappy. Here we go. Okay, should be on the other mic now. It'll sound a little different, but it shouldn't be crappy because I spent like 30 minutes making it not sound shitty today. So just let me know before I get going, because I don't want it to sound poor on your end as we carry on with the session today. While I'm waiting to hear whether or not my mic is working well, if you could all just take your seats. If you need to do some stuff to make the hips feel comfortable, you can do these circle exercises, which are quite simple. You just keep your spine straight. And with a straight spine, you just rotate. If this is my spine, you just rotate like this. And this loosens off the hips and little bits of the lower back. And if you do these nice and slow, I'm doing them a bit fast at the moment, but if you do these kind of slow like this, you actually build up the muscles and things that you need also to hold you in a meditative posture while feeling a bit more comfortable, which is quite nice. It's a very simple, almost rudimentary looking exercise, but it really works wonders, especially if you do it at about this speed and you work on keeping the spine upright as you rock forward and to each side, because you're working all those little muscles that hold everything together. Okay. Second little exercise that works on the mid back a bit more is, again, very simple. I'm going to move this down. We'll see if Nice. The AI is being stupid, just like I like it. So again, very simple. You just rock straight back and straight forward, and you'll feel how that gets into the sort of the waist, more the sort of mid back here, here down, not quite the chest yet. Just rocking forward and back while keeping the spine upright. So again, I'm now just working on this motion only with the spine, this being my spine, right? And you can feel how this once again grabs all the little muscles on the spine and so forth and makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. It also has the effect, there are these muscles that come off the front of the spine like this, and they connect into the legs and the hips. They come down like this. And I find that if I do a few of these, it really helps me grab those little muscles that connect to the legs and tighten them and release them, tighten them and release them. Especially when you go back, they get tight. And then when you come forward and you lean forward, they release. And so you gain more awareness of what those muscles are doing. And those muscles can get quite sore if you're sitting. Next, most of the pain that you have sort of from here up on the back, between here and here, is not actually your back most of the time, it's your shoulders. So a wonderful little exercise for this, to turn sideways. I'll show you adjust this shoulder. I can't remember, oh, it's called the water wheel. So it's a bit like a bicycle pedal. So I'm going to take this shoulder and I press it down and back, and then I bring it up, and then I bring it forward, and then down. So I'm working the full range of that shoulder, see? Now, if you look at my back shoulder, same thing, see? But I'm going to do them opposite each other so that they're stretching across the front and back. So my spine is staying in the same position like this. I'm not moving the spine, I'm not doing this. The spine stays right where it is, and the shoulders are moving like bicycle pedals without moving the spine. And you stretch the tissue like this at an angle, right? You're stretching it like this because one shoulder goes forward and the other goes backwards. See? And then also one shoulder is going up and the other one is going down. See? So I'm stretching it like this and I'm stretching it like this. Does that make sense? Because it's like bicycle pedals. And so you can work out all those little sore bits between the shoulder blades, in the neck. And once again, if you go slow, normally I go quick when we're on stream because I don't want to waste too much time on it, but normally you would do these very slow like this. And you'd use quite a bit of force. You're making everything really tight in the direction that you're pulling things. And then you go backwards as well, as if you're pedaling in the other direction. And then with your hands, see if I can move this down without it freaking out. Nice. So with my hands, if you like to meditate here with your hands in this posture, then put your hands here and do your exercises like this so that you're stretching all of that tissue, getting that tissue used to your hands being here with everything else being relaxed with the hands in this position. Same thing if your hands are here, then do it like this. So wherever you actually keep your hands for meditation, put your hands there, wherever they are, whatever position you actually use, and just get the shoulders and the neck and everything to be comfortable with a wide range of motion with your hands being in that position. All right. Now the last bit. The only thing we haven't done is address this range of motion for the spine. Right? So the spine, if it's upright, if you twist it like this, you can twist the whole column. So starting at the bottom, starting from your sacrum, keeping your hips where they are, but as best you can inside the hips, you're going to turn each vertebra like this. So I'm not doing this, right? Notice where I stay. Notice where the top of my head is relative to the mirror behind me. So when I turn, see how my spine is staying where it is. I'm just turning it in this, like this. So from the bottom up, I'm turning it, and then once I get turned, and I start from the bottom and I relax the muscles. I don't turn back to the front. I just relax the muscles like I'm letting them go, and that unfurls me. And this is an important skill because you're training yourself to be able to tighten those muscles in that whole twisting column. And then you're learning how to release them so that they're relaxed and the spine can sit there without those muscles being tight. So same thing, then you do the other direction, starting from the bottom, turning. And same thing, place your hands wherever they're actually going to be for meditation. And then release to come back to the middle. Okay? And as a bonus exercise, if there's still tension here in this part of the neck, usually that's not because you're doing something wrong with your head, unless your head is like this. Right? If your head is basically in the right position, it's actually your shoulders which are going like this. And you'll feel it if you raise your shoulders and touch your neck is tight. So these muscles in the shoulders tense stuff in the neck. So if you pull your shoulders up to the neck, right, and squeeze them behind you and lift and squeeze and lift and squeeze until everything is super tight, and then release it, you can learn how to grab those muscles that get tight in the neck, which are actually in the shoulders, and then release them. And now you should feel, even after one or two of those sort of really tight lifts like this, then you should feel the back of the neck is quite loose and that you can move that top joint more comfortably without feeling a big stretch in your neck, unless you have neck problems from doing this kind of thing for years, you know, if you work as a mechanic or something. All right, friends. So now that the body is hopefully feeling a little bit better, let's do okay, friends. I'm seeing a lot of sort of side commentary in the chat. If possible, either try to focus on the practices we're doing or come to one of the live streams where we're doing open Q&A, or go to the Discord to have side conversations. But this is a practice session. So if you're not doing practice in this session, then take the conversation to Discord or to the Facebook group or to one of the other sort of chat areas, right? Okay. All right, so assume your posture, whichever posture you'd like to use for meditation today. We'll start in a seated position, and then we'll come to a standing position, and then by popular demand, we'll do some resting on the visual sense gate. So bring the attention to the breath. For those of you who have done this with me before, you know what to do. For those of you who are new, place the attention on the breath with great force. Your distractions have great force. Therefore, in the beginning, your mind, to counteract distractions, must also have great force. The analogy that's sometimes used in the great texts on this is a wild, drunken elephant barreling through the jungle. That's the force of your mind in terms of its distractions. So you need to meet it head on with something equally powerful, and that should be as much force as you can muster, placing the mind onto the breath, not sitting there being nice to yourself. That won't do anything. So breathe in naturally through the nose. Find a patch of skin. You're not going to imagine it. You're not going to visualize it. You're not going to try to figure it out. You're not going to label it with words. Become aware of the actual tactile sensations inside your nostril. Pick one patch of skin. Don't change it. And as best you can, I want you to try to pull every bit of tactile awareness from your entire body and every bit of awareness you have from your entire bandwidth of your being and just cram it into that patch of skin with as much force as you can. Okay? So when I say begin, no delay, no waiting, no BS. Just bring 100,000% every ounce of your being into that patch of skin and count from 1 to 7, 7 to 0, every time you get to the end of an out breath. And the only time you can move your body is when you get to 0. Otherwise, keep your body completely still and keep your awareness on that patch of skin or the numbers and counting. Okay? Here we go. 3, 2, 1, begin. Okay. Come to a standing position. So in a standing position, you're going to take your awareness, just place it into the whole left leg and the whole right leg, into the front and back of the hips, compress it into the tailbone briefly, move forward to the anus, perineum, sexual organ, come to the tip of the organ, and slide back up the tailbone, up the sacrum to the waist area. Become aware of the front and back of the waist. Slide upwards to the front and back of the diaphragm belt. Slide up again to the front and back of the chest. Place the awareness on the left shoulder. Stretch the awareness down to the left hand. Become aware of the whole left arm. Place the mind on the right shoulder. Stretch the awareness down. Become aware of the whole right arm. Place the awareness in the bottom third of the neck. And stretch it up to the top third. And become aware of the whole neck. Place the mind in the joint between the neck and the skull. And then just become aware of the whole skull. Now that the mind is a little bit calmer, we're going to begin transitioning over to vision. But before we do, stay with the tactile sensations, stay with the body. Become aware of the left eyebrow and the right eyebrow. Left eyelid, right eyelid. Left eyeball, right eyeball. And the socket around the left eye. The socket around the right eye. And if the eyes are not already open, then open them. If standing is too difficult, you can do this seated. But let the vision point forward instead of down. Your eyes have little muscles that pull in each direction. The neutral position for your eyes is facing forward, which is why we look forward in this practice. One of many reasons. So with the gaze pointed forward, I want you to take a moment to just sort of zoom out with your awareness. You're not looking at anything in particular. Just become aware that the entire visual field is a little bit like a television screen or a phone screen, that the entire visual image can be regarded as one thing. Close your eyes for a second and notice that even with the eyes closed, the entire darkness of the visual field can be taken in as one big thing. And open the eyes, pointing forward. Now, maintaining that awareness of the visual field basically as one big object, place more attention in the middle of the field. so that you're taking in what is to the front, basically in the center of the field. You're not looking at anything in particular, you're just putting more of your mental bandwidth, more of your attention in the center of the field. For the sake of practices that are coming later, I'm going to call the next direction backward or back. When I say become aware of back, what I mean is become aware of everything that's close to your eyes. So that's going to be the nose, eye sockets, eyebrows, upper cheeks, whatever it is you can see that's close to your eyeballs. Okay, release that. Now become aware of everything that's as far as possible to the left without moving the eyes. And to the right. And upward. And downward. Now release that. We're going to start combining directions now. So become aware of front and back. Release that. Become aware of left and right. Release that. Become aware of up and down. Release that. Now we'll combine the 6 directions. If all 6 is too difficult, then ignore front and back and just do left, right, up, down. So let's start, however, with front and back. So become aware of the whole central field of the vision. Without losing that, add on left and right. Without losing that, add on up and down. Now hold either 4 directions or 6 directions. Some of you might be noticing that geometric patterns are appearing, or that the vision is getting strange, or that you're seeing light, usually gold light or white light, or that the visual field is becoming indistinct in places. That's totally normal and it will go away. It's not particularly important. Just continue to be aware of the entire visual field while relying on either 4 directions or 6 directions. Brush the directions. Front, back, left, right, up, down. Okay. Hopefully you had a bit of an experience with this where you felt, how to put it, you felt that when you opened, sorry, I'm getting a notification from YouTube. Hmm. Is the audio okay? All good. Okay. So hopefully you had the experience when you were opening the visual sense gate that you had, even though you're holding 6 directions or 4 directions, which is a bit of a challenge, hopefully you had the experience that a fair amount of the normal busyness, let's call it, of your visual processing went away. That you're taking in more of the sort of screen, the entire screen of visual awareness, and therefore you're able to pull your mind back from the normal process of the mind running around inside the awareness like this. And then the eyes changing directions to see whatever the mind's attention is pointed at, right? So the mind points its awareness here, and then the eyes turn, bang. And then the mind sees something move here, and the mind turns, bang, right? So instead of that, you take in the whole field, and even if stuff moves inside of it, even if there's light appearing or geometric shapes or the other weird things that happen when you just stare at something too long, uh, the mind isn't distracted by all this. It just takes in the whole field based on holding the directions. And eventually, you don't have to use the directions all the time. You use the directions to help open up the awareness, and then you just pull back and you abide in the awareness. So even if you couldn't actually get the mind to fully rest, you can get some sense that, I can see how it could rest, right? on the whole visual field, even though I can't do that yet. Hopefully, some of you had that experience. Jonathan sends a super chat. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I appreciate it. For those of you who don't know, I teach all of this stuff for free. But to do this full time, and currently I'm putting in, I'd say, in the ballpark of 70 to 100 hours a week. To do this and to not do anything else, I do have to have a fair amount of donations from the community coming in every month. So there are lots of ways to support me before I carry on answering questions for today. You can become a member on YouTube, but YouTube will take 30% of that. Or you could go to the school course and become a member of the school course. I park, there's a whole community conversation going on there. The community, you can watch previous streams and find out what it's all about. But the school course is a great way to support me from month to month, and a bigger portion of that goes to me instead of to YouTube or the Apple Store. Or if you want to make a larger one-off donation, you can send that through one of the two donation links I have down below. And I would recommend, if you use GoFundMe, that you slide the GoFundMe percentage down to something smaller than what they recommend, because they take a fairly large chunk if you don't turn that slider all the way down. Okay, so if you'd like to support what we're doing so that I can carry on doing this for free, then please do send through some donations. Super chats are welcome. YouTube does take 30% of those. If you're on an iPhone, your iPhone will take another 30%. So then only 40% goes to me. So if you'd like more of whatever you're sending through to go to me, send it through one of the donation channels that I have set up. Even though every dollar, every pound, every penny is appreciated, I'd like your money to go as far as it possibly can supporting this mission. Okay, having said all of that, are there questions from today's practice? Going back to Abhishek's question before the session, if you're here or you end up watching this later, Abhishek, I'm not able to see who's in the chat, unfortunately. So if when I was in school, for example, hold on, I'm going to change back over to the other mic because I like the sound quality on that better. When I was in school, where is it? B2, B2. There it is. Hello, check, check, check. So when I was in school, I did a lot of meditation training, and I was considering being a monk. So when I was training in doing a fair amount of meditation training a day, and first getting into all this, I was pretty sure that I was going to become a monk. And so I was studying language, and I was studying Buddhist meditation, and I was studying I was studying a lot of stuff because I was still getting an undergraduate degree. And so I took the opportunity to turn my studies into more meditation time and to improve my meditation skills as best I could. So one of the things I did, for example, is when I was learning Japanese, although I don't speak Japanese, I spent a year or two doing it. When I was learning Japanese, I would visualize the characters, and I would hold the characters in my mind as objects of meditation while I was studying, so that I could recall the characters. So on the one hand, I was training my ability to visualize, and on the other, I was training in what I needed to train in to pass my classes. So you can, if you think it through and you really consider, what are the things I'm already doing, and how can I transform these into more training? You can get creative and find opportunities to train your mind. Alex Smith asks how often I go live. I do sit and see class almost every day, unless there's something else going on and I can't do it. But I think that's only happened once in 41 days. So basically every day. And then when there's time, I also like to go live and do what I call just an open Q&A, sort of an ask me anything. And yeah, there we go. And those can last anywhere from 2 hours to 5.5 hours, depending on how questions are going and so on and so forth. And those I do sporadically, depending on whether or not I have time. There's a lot more content I want to make, and I've been working with Neil Ripsky, who's the first podcast guest. That podcast is going to go back up, so I was editing that, and then I was helping him build a website, which I'm going to put in the chat right now because it's freaking awesome. Really, really awesome. Love how it turned out, and as I said earlier in the stream, some of you are new. Neil is a Buddhist. He trained in the Thai forest tradition with a monk who's in the same lineage as Acharya Moon, who's extremely important. Basically, everyone you've ever heard of in the Thai forest tradition probably trained with him or one of his students. He's just like one of the greats of our era. And one of his students I mentioned in one of the first videos, Venerable Mahabua, was one of his students, was Acharya Moon's student. So in that same lineage is another great meditator in the Thai forest tradition who Neil Ripsky trained with and did about a year's worth of training, 2 hours, I think it was 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, where he was training in sort of the full program for how to do Thai forest meditation in that particular lineage. So he did that, and then he's been training. He's been training in how to say. He's been training in Chinese internal martial arts and Chinese internal arts and all of the sort of methods from Shaolin, which are Buddhist and have some influence from Taoism and Confucianism, but are mainly the mainstream is Buddhist. And all of these techniques that they spent hundreds of years developing to make your body and your energy system, in terms of qigong and shen gong and nei gong, all the gongs, all the techniques to make your body really work perfectly and last a long time for training and meditation. I don't teach those techniques. I do those practices, but I don't teach them. And Neil has 40 years training in this stuff. He's maybe one of the best guys in the West, in the world. I'm not exaggerating. And nobody knows he exists. It's heartbreaking. It's another example where, like a great practitioner just doesn't know how to get people sort of interested in what he's doing in the modern world, you know? So So I helped Neil build a website, lohanpalm.com, and he wants to transition over from teaching all sorts of other stuff. You can read about his full training background. It's really impressive. He wants to transition over from doing that to teaching mainly Lohan Palm, the 18 Lohan. So Lohan is the Chinese word for Arhat, and the Shaolin Temple has one of the streams of Shaolin practice has a set of techniques called the 18 Lohan Palm, and it's a set of techniques that has a martial art in it, but it also has all of these other things that you find in Shaolin in terms of Qigong, Shengong, Neigong, Neidan, bone marrow washing, tendon changing, etc., 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 that make the body absolutely perfect for training and meditation. And it's a system of health that keeps the body working until you're very old and adds more vitality to your body and your mind so that as you get older you have more time to complete the practices. So it makes you strong, it makes you healthy, it gives you more energy. and it leads down the road towards having more meditative capability. Here's one of the brilliant things. If everyone's into this, please let me know if you're not into this. But one of the brilliant things about the Hindu traditions and the Buddhist traditions, the Taoist traditions, is they realize somewhere along the way that if you train your body, it has a tremendous effect on your mind. And then all of these systems together and independently discovered that there's like subtler substances that run through the body in a certain way, and that if you learn to store those, manage those well, move them around the body, uh, this is called prana in the Indian traditions. It's called chi and shen and a number of other things in the Chinese traditions. When you learn how to use these things, it improves your health and makes your mind sharper and makes you live longer. And you can also use them to do things in meditation that are really beneficial. So, Shaolin has developed a huge number of practices that help you improve every layer of your being to make it even better for your training and meditation. And I can tell you from experience, these things work extremely well and are extremely helpful to your practice of meditation on a number of levels. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Lohanpalm.com will be going live probably sometime in the next week or so. The website is up. You can sign up for a pre-sign up. That doesn't obligate you to anything. It just says that you're interested, and we'll tell Neil a little bit about what people think is a fair price to pay for what's being offered, and so on and so forth. And that information will be helpful in finalizing everything. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, if you want an energetic practice, a body practice, etc., to go along with your Buddhist practice or your meditation practice, Lohan Palm, excellent, really excellent opportunity. Because the only thing else that's out there is basically the Hindu yoga systems, physical yogas, and those, at least the way they're being taught right now, they don't have as many layers as this. This has way more layers. And in my humble experience, because I trained in Ashtanga yoga for pretty hardcore for about a year, and it's not even close. These systems have so many more layers and get you so much deeper into what's happening in your system. It's not even close. The two are not comparable. Thank you for coming, Cleric. I'll see you later. So please do check out lohanpalm.com. I'm going to be talking a lot about it because I really want people to succeed in meditation. And since I don't teach the energetic side and the body side of this practice very much, I want there to be a resource I can direct people towards, and this is it. This is definitely it. Okay. Dylan asks, Hindu non-self versus Hindu Atman. Is it possible they're pointing towards the same thing? Nothing equals everything. I would say, generally speaking, no. It depends on the school. There are certain schools of Advaita Vedanta that maybe because of their influence, in their Buddhist influence on those systems. Or I've heard Kashmiri Shivism, which is a type of Hindu Tantra, if I'm not mistaken. Like there are certain streams of Taoist practice, because Buddhism and these systems have been interacting for hundreds of years, a couple thousand years. And in the case of the Brahminical, Vedic, and Jain cultures and Buddhism have been having a conversation for a long time, right? Very long time. The Buddhist wisdom aspect may have made its way into these systems, but here's the big difference. When we talk about selflessness is the absence of something. It's not the presence of something. Emptiness is the absence of something in particular, not the presence of something. So if the system that you're talking about says eventually you arrive at a something that is the ultimate something, even if it's everything and that's the ultimate something, then they're not talking about what Buddhists are talking about. Because what we're talking about is that your way of seeing reality, even in deep states of concentration, even when you see consciousness itself as it exists, right, as it appears to exist, that you will see it in a way that's mistaken. And because you're seeing it in a way that's mistaken, it's going to look like it exists in a way that it doesn't exist. And that way it appears to exist is what you're negating with emptiness or selflessness. When you negate that, what you arrive at is, in Buddhist psychological terms, they call it an isolate. You isolate the fact, mentally, you isolate the very fact that that thing you thought was there isn't there. You thought a self existent, utterly independent relationship, something existing beyond relationships, existed there. And when you looked for it, it wasn't there. So the non existence of what you thought was there is what you take as the object of awareness. And that's all that's there is the absence of that, the isolate of that particular fact about that thing. And that's the ultimate nature of that thing. Now, if another system says, no, no, the ultimate nature is you look at consciousness and consciousness is the thing that you're isolating, basically, and you're just looking at consciousness, then we're not talking about the same thing. It's not. And if you say that the thing you've isolated for a sort of way of talking about it is if the screen is the entire universe and you're saying we're taking the entire universe as the object of meditation, well, that's the presence of something, not the absence of something. So that's not what we're talking about. You see it? Right. Okay. Much more on that. Venerable Mahabua, I don't think Mahabua smoked cigarettes. Ajahn Chah smoked cigarettes. I think Mahabua, when he was younger, maybe smoked cigarettes. That's kind of a big thing in Thailand. It used to be considered a healthy thing to do before everyone figured out it gave you cancer, and then I think at some point everybody stopped doing it. Okay. Jonathan asks if seeing Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is always the basically seeing the actual Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or if sometimes it's just in your head. Yeah, sometimes it's just in your head. As a matter of fact, even when this is kind of a funny story, right? When you think about the stakes that are involved and who it is and so on and so forth. But when Lama Tsongkhapa had Manjushri, the actual Buddha Manjushri, appearing in front of him and talking to him like I'm talking to you right now, even though he was seeing an actual Buddha in full Buddha form talking to him like I'm talking to you, he then took what he heard to his actual human teachers and said, "What do you think about this?" Not the vision of the Buddha, Manjushri, but what do you think about what he taught me? Do you think this is valid? You know, can we debate this a bit and see, like, do these ideas actually work or do they not work, and blah 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 blah. So the great beings who can actually have these kinds of visions and have these experiences, the way that they relate to those experiences is a bit more conventional than you might think in some cases. It's not like you have these revelatory experiences and you know 100% that all of it's valid, and you know what I mean? So even the great yogis, sometimes they have these experiences and it's genuinely a being that's appearing there, and they'll still assess in a very logical, practical, straightforward way. They'll still assess what is it that, is this information accurate or is it not? So speaking from a bit more from the heart, since I know some people who have had experiences like this, and I could tell you things that would sound mythological. In fact, I don't like talking about those things in public because it just makes you sound like a nut, and people do that sort of thing to try to get students, and I think that's not right. But suffice it to say, I know people who have had experiences that are like this, and when you have them, it's sort of, how to say, it's not as sort of serious as it sounds. It gives you more faith in it gives you more faith that what you're doing is real, but in an important sense, it's not what this is all about. Because you can see as many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other beings as you can handle, and you still have to do all the work when you wake up tomorrow morning. You're still going to have to pay the water bill. You're still going to have to deal with your kids who don't like you. You have to deal with your boss who yells at you. You're still going to have to train your mind to be better than it is because your mind's a total mess. So even if you have these kinds of, or if your guru comes to you in your dreams and gives you teachings that you couldn't have possibly known and you've never read about, and you put them into practice and they work, so you know that they're real. Like these things, I know practitioners who have these things happen to them, but you still have to do all the same work. And the people that have those experiences generally don't walk around like, oh, I'm the big man now because I have these experiences. They are totally normal looking and you would never know. And they would never talk about them. And mostly they would, in particular, never talk about them to try to get students or something, which is one of the signs that someone's, not always, but it can be a good sign to give you hesitation about whether a teacher is a real teacher or not. There are exceptions to this, right? You got to be careful about making broad, sweeping statements. But if a certain person is like pretty casually telling you that, oh, yeah, yeah, I know all this because the Buddhas came to me and told me that your future is this or whatever, you gotta be like, I'm not sure about you now. To put it in perspective, to the degree that I have had my teachers and other people in the community talk about these things, usually it's after knowing them for years and having no idea that they had anything like this going on. And then they say, oh, yes, that thing we're reading about in the text, that did happen to me on a couple of occasions, and here's what it was like. And it is a real thing as far as I'm concerned. And that's about as far as it goes, usually. Okay. Okay, that looks like it's the end of questions for now. I'm debating whether or not I want to do a live Q&A. Would anybody be up for, it's a Sunday, would anybody be up for an open Q&A? You guys let me know. If there are questions you've been dying to ask that you can't ask because we're in this class, maybe it's time to have another open Q&A. Well, I'm going to shut this stream down. Let me know in the chat or in the comments section if you'd like me to do an open Q&A tonight. And if I get enough requests, then I'll hop on and do an open Q&A a bit tonight. Okay? Let me know. Thank you so much for coming. Hope to see you again very soon. Try not to die before I do.